Hi, I'm Avery Thompson. Before I get into my story, please like and subscribe if you're interested in hearing about how I've dealt with some major family drama. Trust me, you won't want to miss this ride. I'm 32, doing great in my marketing career, and married to Michael, my high school sweetheart. On paper, things look perfect, but let me tell you, family dynamics can be a real nightmare. At our last family dinner, my mother-in-law, Barbara, looked at my dress and said, "Avery, darling, that dress is interesting." Her voice was dripping with fake sweetness. "I guess it's what's fashionable these days," she added. I forced a smile and replied, "Thanks, Barbara. It's actually a designer piece I got for a great price." Michael squeezed my hand under the table, his silent way of telling me to let it go, but it's hard to ignore years of subtle insults and coldness. Then, Michael's dad jumped in, completely ignoring me. "So Michael, how's that big project at work going? And don't even get me started on Samantha, Michael's sister. She's the worst." She smirked and said, "Oh Avery, remember when you tried to bring that vegan casserole to Thanksgiving? Bless your heart for trying." I held back my frustration, thinking about how they accidentally left my dish in the kitchen that year. I just smiled and said, "Well, you know me, always trying something new." Michael gave me an apologetic look, knowing how hard I'd tried with his family, but he always hoped things would get better on their own. Flashback to our wedding day, I was so excited to officially join the family. Barbara greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to the Petersons," she said. "I hope you'll fit in, eventually." 5 years later, I'm still waiting for that eventually. Back at the dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment alone. I stared at my reflection, giving myself a pep talk. "You're doing this for Michael," I whispered. "Stay strong." I returned to the dining room with a fake smile and asked, "Who's ready for dessert?" Trying to lighten the mood, Samantha rolled her eyes and said, "Some of us actually watch our figures, Avery." Before I could respond, Samantha's face twisted in pain. She clutched her side and gasped, I can't breathe." The room exploded into chaos. "Samantha," Barbara screamed, rushing to her daughter. "Call an ambulance," Michael's dad yelled, panic clear in his voice as Samantha collapsed to the floor. I froze, stunned by what was happening. Despite the years of cold treatment, seeing her like this hit me hard. I snapped out of it and shakily dialed 911. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. I heard myself saying, "Help is on the way," though I wasn't sure who I was trying to reassure. As we waited for the ambulance, the air was thick with fear and uncertainty. I couldn't help but wonder, would this crisis bring us closer together or push us further apart? The waiting room was a blur of white walls and the sharp smell of antiseptic. I couldn't shake the image of Samantha collapsing at dinner. Despite our differences, I never wanted anything bad to happen to her. Michael was pacing back and forth, his face full of worry. A doctor in a white coat approached us. "I'm Dr. Chen. I have news about Samantha," he said. We all gathered around him, holding our breath. "I'm afraid Samantha has end-stage renal disease. Her kidneys are failing, and she urgently needs a transplant." The news hit us hard. Mrs. Peterson started sobbing, and Mr. Peterson's face went pale. "What are our options, doctor?" Michael asked, his voice shaking. "We need to find a suitable donor quickly," Dr. Chen replied. "Family members are usually the best match. I'd recommend testing all of you." The next few days were a whirlwind of tests and anxious waiting. One by one, the Peterson family was ruled out as potential donors. The atmosphere grew tense with each negative result. Then came the shocking news. "Avery, you're a perfect match for Samantha," Dr. Chen announced. The room fell silent, and I felt everyone's eyes on me, filled with a mix of hope and expectation. Suddenly, the Petersons' attitude toward me changed. Mrs. Peterson, who had always been cold, was now all smiles. "Oh, Avery, dear, what wonderful news," she gushed, grabbing my hands. Mr. Peterson chimed in, "We always knew you were special. Avery, you're truly a blessing to this family." Their sudden affection felt strange and insincere. I mumbled something vague and excused myself to get some air. Later that evening, while I was getting coffee in the hospital cafeteria, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson cornered me. "Avery, we need to talk," Mr. Peterson said, his tone serious. "We know it's a big decision, but Samantha's life is at stake." Mrs. Peterson added, tears in her eyes, "You're part of this family now, and family takes care of each other." Mr. Peterson finished. "Michael would do the same for you in a heartbeat," Mr. Peterson said. their words making me feel trapped. I need time to think about this. It's a major surgery, I stammered. Time, Mrs. Peterson's voice rose. Samantha doesn't have time. Now, Mr. Peterson tried to calm his wife, before turning back to me. Just think about how this could affect your future with Michael. He's very close to his sister, you know. Their veiled threat hung in the air. I muttered something about needing to talk to Michael and hurried away, my head spinning. That night, as I pretended to sleep, I overheard Michael talking to his parents in the hallway. She just needs a little convincing, Michael said. I'll talk to her. Avery will come around. I'm sure of it. She has to. We can't lose Samantha, Mrs. Peterson hissed. Do whatever it takes, Michael. My heart pounded as I lay there. The family I had tried so hard to please was now plotting against me. I felt alone, scared, and utterly betrayed. The conversation left me in shock. I couldn't believe what Michael and his parents were planning. It was time to dig deeper into the family's past. I started with Samantha's medical records. It wasn't easy, but I managed to get them. What I found was shocking. Years of heavy drinking and drug use had destroyed her kidneys. The Petersons knew all along but had hidden the truth, enabling her behavior. I reached out to Michael's ex, Sarah. Hey Sarah, it's Avery. Can we meet for coffee? I need to ask you something important. Sarah agreed to meet, and over lattes, she spilled the truth. The Petersons? They're users. Avery. They treated me like family until I wasn't useful anymore. Then they threw me away like I was nothing. Her words sent chills down my spine. Everything made sense now. The cold treatment, the sudden kindness when they needed my kidney. I was just another pawn in their game. Next, I dug into the family business. After some creative digging, I uncovered a web of financial irregularities, and Michael's name was all over it. Confronting Michael was the hardest part. I laid out everything I'd discovered. What the hell, Avery? You've been snooping behind my back? Michael snapped. Can you blame me after what I overheard? I shot back. That was a private conversation, and what's wrong with wanting to save my sister's life? It's not about saving Samantha, it's about how your family has treated me for years, and now, suddenly, I'm their savior. You're being selfish. This is my sister we're talking about. Michael's face turned red. And I'm your wife, but that doesn't seem to matter to you or your family, I replied. The argument escalated until I dropped the bomb about the business. You're involved in fraud, Michael. Did you think I wouldn't find out? His face went pale. It's not what you think. We had to do it to keep the business afloat. By breaking the law? By putting everything at risk? Michael stormed out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The next day, I called a family meeting. Everyone gathered in the Petersons' living room, tension hanging thick in the air. I've made my decision, I announced. I won't be donating my kidney. The room erupted. Barbara jumped up, her face twisted with rage. You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you. Mr. Peterson joined in. You'll regret this, Avery. We'll make sure Michael sees you for who you really are. Samantha, pale and weak, spoke up. I knew you were never really part of this family. I stood my ground as insults and threats flew. Michael sat there silently, torn between his family and me. I've seen your true colors now, I said calmly. You've used and manipulated people for years. I won't be your next victim, I said as I turned to leave. Michael finally spoke up. Avery, if you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I paused at the doorway and looked back at the family that had never truly accepted me. Goodbye, Michael. I hope you realize what you're losing before it's too late. After that explosive meeting, I knew there was no turning back. I had to protect myself and expose the truth about the Petersons. I spent weeks gathering evidence, financial records, emails, even recordings of conversations. It felt like solving a twisted puzzle, each piece revealing more of their dark secrets. I reached out to my old friend, Emma, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. I really need your help, I said, my voice cracking. Avery? Oh my God, what's wrong? She asked, genuinely concerned. I told her everything, the manipulation, the fraud, the kidney donation mess. Emma listened without judgment and then said, You're coming to stay with me, no arguments. Her support was a lifeline. I realized how isolated I'd become in my marriage, cut off from my own support system. As I reconnected with old friends and family, I grew stronger every day. One night, after triple-checking my anonymous tip, I hit send on an email to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. My heart raced as I watched the sending icon spin. There was no going back now. The investigation moved quickly. Within weeks, news broke of a major fraud probe into the Peterson family business. I watched from a distance as their carefully crafted image fell apart. Michael called me in a panic. "Avery, what have you done? The feds are all over the office." "I didn't do anything, Michael," I said calmly. "The truth is finally coming out." He paused, then said quietly, "I'm sorry, Avery. I should have listened to you, but it was too late for apologies. I had already filed for divorce, using the evidence I'd gathered to ensure a fair settlement. In the end, Michael stayed loyal to his family, not me." The fallout was huge. The company was charged with fraud and embezzlement, and Michael and his parents faced serious jail time. Samantha's substance abuse issues came to light during the investigation, jeopardizing her spot on the transplant list. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my life. I started a support group for people who had escaped manipulative family situations. It became my way of turning all that pain into something positive, helping others while finally freeing myself from the Petersons' control. At our first meeting, a woman tearfully shared, "I never thought I'd be strong enough to leave." "But you did," I reassured her, "and that's what matters." Months passed, and I was having lunch with Emma when breaking news flashed on the TV in the restaurant. The Petersons were being led out of court in handcuffs. "Holy," Emma whispered, "they're actually going to prison." I felt a swirl of emotions: relief, vindication, and a twinge of sadness for what could have been. Later that week, I got an unexpected call. It was Samantha. "Avery, it's me. I got a kidney, an anonymous donor." "That's great, Samantha. I'm happy for you," I replied, unsure of what else to say. There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, Avery, for everything. You were right about us." After a moment, I simply said, "I hope you make the most of this second chance, Samantha. Goodbye." As I hung up, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The Petersons were finally facing justice, their reputation and finances in ruins, but most importantly, I was free. That night, I wrote in my journal, "A year ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Now I realize it was all a carefully constructed lie." But the truth, as painful as it was, set me free. I stood up for myself, exposed the lies, and walked away. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. To anyone out there facing a similar situation, remember, you're stronger than you know. Don't let anyone manipulate you into sacrificing your own well-being. Your life is yours, and you deserve to live it on your own terms. I closed the journal, proud of how far I had come. I had survived the Petersons, and now, I was thriving. That was the best revenge of all. The story of Avery and the Petersons has come to an end. Now, I have a question for you. If you were in Avery's shoes, would you have donated your kidney to Samantha, despite all the mistreatment from the Peterson family? Or do you think Avery made the right choice by prioritizing her own well-being?